This is like 94.5. We Were Gamers, a follow-up podcast, because sometimes there's just too much to fit into one episode. Mainly when you're going to talk about Black Panther. I think we did a good job hitting the themes.
Yeah.
Like what we really maybe stood out to us on the movie. I don't know. I have specific questions, and since Ken's in the home studio, I'm just going to drop the home part. The studio with us tonight. Michael and I are going to pepper you with questions, and also maybe hit some more character notes or something like that on
I'll answer
what we saw in the movie, and kind of go from there. Yeah. But this is part ish of our previous episode. So reiterating the spoiler warning for Black Panther, which just came out this week, so I know a lot of people haven't seen it. All right.
So for those that are, since it's called We Were Gamers, I guess this would be an expansion pack or DLC to the previous episode, to the previous release. No one likes my gamer humor. All right, carry on.
I was waiting to see if Michael was going to laugh. I was like, I'll give him props if he thinks it's funny. With me, it's Andrew. With me is Michael.
Hey, friends.
And Ken.
Hello, all.
And we're going to do some more Black Panther talk. We talked a lot at the very end of last episode, and I think it's a good place to start off. Maybe, because we talked about kind of like all the movies recently up till now, and the feelings we got from all of them. And I have a question. The next movie that every single one is in Infinity War, right?
Yeah, that's our next like touchstone for every character to get caught up in. And after that, I'm pretty sure, now I have to think about the time release.
We do another phase after that?
They said after, it's still like a third phase, I think, or fourth phase we're in, but like after the Infinity War Part 2, like after that, they're kind of like, okay, we haven't fully planned for that yet. So
Infinity War is 2 movies?
Yes. Sorry, Infinity War will be likely, from what I've heard rumors, it'll be Infinity War and then Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh.
So Avengers Infinity War and then Avengers Infinity Gauntlet.
That title kind of spoils the end of the first movie, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is, they haven't officially said the name of the second movie yet. Like, there was a slip-up from Zoe Saldana. She's like, oh, yeah, after we finish this, and we're going to go wrap that up, and then we're going to go back for Gauntlet, and then
the internet.
Then the internet.
That was all that needed.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is... They could easily change the name to, Infinity Crusade, Infinity... I'm trying to think of any other the Infinity Wars they've had. Infinity War, Infinity Crusade, Infinity Gauntlet.
Infinite Crisis.
DC, sir.
You have been nerd checked.
He knows I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
There's no Booster Gold here.
Yeah, there's no Booster Gold here. So, this is a question. Yeah, that's the dog snoring.
Yeah.
Is it? So they haven't planned. Are we getting the best character at the end? Is this the end? Like, does anybody get that feeling? I had a weird feeling. I talked on the last segment of the pod. I said, I did, and I think you guys did, had that feeling like we finally got one of the best ones. Yeah. And then Infinity War is going to come, and it's not going to wipe out the Marvel universe. They're still going to do more Marvel movies, but if I'm Marvel and I'm thinking about long-term contracts and actors and their ages and characters and refreshing the brand and all that sort of stuff, there's a decent shot here of saying, like, well, maybe Infinity War Part 2 is the last time you see all of these people, and then we press the reset button. Am I out of my gourd?
I don't think so, Michael.
No, I agree with that. I think we're going to see a reset on either going in a different direction or a reset on who's in the roles of some of these characters.
Maybe they say, "Hey, everything's now the Ultimates universe," or
I think some of the things we have to take into account too is that like there is still the Fox deal that's in the works, and so.
So in part of the reset is the X-Men. They're now part of our
mutants
universe.
Are back.
Yeah, oh boy.
Or I mean, and as you said, the Ultimate Universe, like the world, we're gonna get an animated Miles Morales movie for Spider-Man. So the world's going to get another introduction, or and I guess probably the first introduction for the majority of the world to meet Miles Morales. And that's that's an opportunity when you have the reality gem in the open and things can change. Any number of things can happen. And this is also the idea that with them only have a limited time with Tom Holland Spider-Man, so many movies, maybe things change up. Maybe we don't see Tom Holland after this. Maybe we do. I would love for Marvel to be able to get at least the film division of Sony. I no longer want Sony to have their hands on the Marvel property. If you look at that Venom teaser, like, there's nothing there that excites me, and that's mainly because I don't trust Sony. Like, their track record doesn't lead me to believe to put any faith in them.
That's interesting because I saw that Sony Venom trailer and I thought, oh, good, okay, like, this doesn't look bad.
Well, what did you see of Venom in it?
I didn't see Venom. That's why it didn't look bad.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, and like I don't know, like, I don't understand how you have Venom. Although I heard a really interesting comment from Mark Bernardin on Fat Man on Batman. He said, like, what if at the end of Infinity War 1, like, oh, we're all in the Milano, and oh, what's this goo on the side of the ship Spider-Man finds, and is that how we get there? And I don't know. I don't trust Sony, so I don't know. And unless Marvel comes out and says, oh, we have a hand in Venom, then I'll be like, oh, then a lot of my fears are assuaged.
I'm just happy to see Eddie Brock get his own movie.
I don't if it was Kevin Feige behind it, I would be 300% more behind this movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when was the last time that Tom Hardy did a bad movie?
I think it wasn't. Well, I mean, do you Sucker Punch? What was another one?
Tom Hardy was in Sucker Punch?
I thought he was. I'd have to look at my phone because I had this discussion with someone, and I thought Sucker Punch was on there. And another one of his is JPG had mentioned these because I haven't seen a lot of Tom Hardy movies specifically, but I mean,
oh man, he's so good.
He's good, but I mean, just because you're a good actor doesn't mean you can't be in bad movies.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Yep.
Good point. All right, so I'm glad I'm not the only one that's concerned about. Mostly, actually, really concerned about like losing this iteration of Black Panther with only 1.5 movies and. I doubt that he's the main character of the coming movies, right?
Yeah, I don't see Chadwick Boseman, I especially with how well this movie did, I don't see them, if they do some shakeups at Marvel in this, I can see a Captain America movie led by Bucky Barnes as, Bucky Cap, and then moving forward with other plans and still having certain centerpieces in this world. I don't know about, like, Robert Downey Jr. because he is such a large paycheck that it's like, ooh, how do we keep, like, he's great to have around. I love him, but he is not inexpensive to make a movie with. So
yeah, unless they're going to work in some sort of profit sharing thing. But I seriously think though, you're looking at a future where they have to think about like, well, he's over 50, right? I mean,
yeah, his age is. I mean,
not that his age is a problem, but
I mean, role, considering his role is what I'm doing right now, sitting in a chair and just like, okay, we'll just put some, digital lights over here, and you look this way and act angry. Like, like a lot of his stuff is he doesn't even put on a suit anymore, which really actually bothers me when I see visual effects that aren't quite there yet. And I'm like, I can see your head floating at the top of that armor. Like, that's not. But again, I'm a very specific nerd about stuff. But like, I see that I'm like, ever since Clone Wars, when that happened, or not Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, digital armor isn't what it should be. Like, you should like just wear a chest piece so that they can meld it like at another point. Like, I don't know. But we're way off topic. But back to point, Chadwick Boseman did such a phenomenal job here. I can imagine with the numbers he did over this weekend, that they're like, no, lock him in. They're already trying to lock in Ryan Coogler for the second one, which I hope he does do the second one, but I want him to wait a couple weeks so they get the numbers back on. He's like, no, I'm charging you this much now.
Yeah.
Hold him hostage, huh?
Yeah, just for a little bit, because like they're like, oh, if we lock him in now, as opposed to after the movie comes out, like if it doesn't do well, we can get him here.
Oh, they already know it smashed every record that they were hoping it would.
Yeah. It broke records for pre-sales too, which is awesome. Like, that's something sometimes Hollywood doesn't talk about, is how strong like the black movie market is. Like even movies that like that you don't expect to make money. They make money because there's a following there, and they don't recognize that a lot of times. Hollywood being the they.
Hollywood studio executives.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
At least from what I've read and my experience and what I've seen, I'm like, oh, they don't expect much out of certain movies, and like they do really well. Like, and I think this movie shows that.
I think that putting 9 months of Disney ad budget behind this, they knew it was going to be a big movie.
Yeah.
I don't think they expected it to be a small movie, and I don't know. I haven't seen many movies on opening weekend, and I don't know many movies that I've seen opening weekend that everybody else I know has seen opening weekend. So just by the smell test, I'd say this is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was something special.
And that's the thing, too, is like, not since, I can't think of the last, like, there was the last time you saw characters, like, even, like, they talk about, other black superheroes have existed before this, but like this is one who wasn't a criminal, wasn't like at least wanted by the law or something, or like a vampire hunter. Like, he's a straightforward, like, I'm just a superhero and I'm completely good. Like, yeah, there's some stuff I have to deal with, but really it's none of his choices that he's had to deal with, because he hasn't been, he's righteous. T'Challa is just fully righteous in this movie, and he has to deal with some of the sins of the father, but he steps up and takes care of them, and he handles it to the best of his abilities. And even at the end of Civil War, like, he says, those two men inside are being, torn apart by their need for revenge, and I'm not going to let that rule me anymore. And like, he's from the get-go, like, yeah, in Civil War, he was a little more in desire of vengeance, but in such a quick amount of time, he understood, like, you know what, I can't let this rule me, I can't keep pushing this forward. I've got to be better than that. And the character is so phenomenal. It
did stick out to me that since I guess Civil War was a week before this movie that we just saw, that he went from like murderous revenge, blowing up cars in an underground, being upset about collateral damage, but not really caring because it was the outside world, to like understanding at the end of this movie that the outside world is eventually his problem.
Yeah.
Because of Killmonger, right?
Killmonger's the leading reason, but I definitely think there's seeds planted there because of Zemo and Civil War. Like, he's like realizing that these, like, to a degree, we were the only superpower, like a real superpower, like beyond what everyone knew as that. And now, like, other people can can affect us in ways we didn't see coming.
Yeah, I like that. I think too, his rapid transition, and this is something we talked about in the previous segment, can be attributed to that question of who are you, and that to me as a greeting implies a certain constancy of self-evaluation and self-reflection it's not present in a lot of the other characters in the MCU, right? The ability to step back and say, who am I? What am I doing? What do I believe in? With a regularity to affect changes in their direction.
I like that theory, and it's 100% a theme of the film, right? Like, because you voiced the theme, that it's there, and because the movie pushes these characters to evaluate themselves, it's there. But I have an interesting question, follow-up to that. What is always the answer, like one of the Wakandans' answers?
In what regard?
The very first thing out of all of their mouths, who are you? Or when Killmonger's in the room, ask me who I am. Yeah. Ask me who I am.
Yeah.
What's the first thing out of their mouths every time?
Well, when in that case, he said he said his name, and I didn't catch it, but he said the son of Njobu. Like,
yeah,
he's
it's always their name and the son of.
Yeah,
the name and the son. It's the lineage question. So it's a real juxtaposition to always be saying, yes, these characters are reevaluating themselves, and the greeting of "Who are you?" means who are you becoming, but also the answer is never well, I'm T'Challa, the freer of the fifth tribe, or like the rebuilder of Wakanda, or any of these things. It's I'm T'Challa, son of T'Chaka.
Yeah.
It's still the lineage question. So does that mean that they're static in some sense, or does that only window dressing, or am I crazy?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing about the last line of the movie being, who are you? You don't get a chance for him to answer that. He could say, that's where it's left open. Like, he could say, I am, I'm T'Challa, son of T'Chaka, and go into things, or he can be like, I'm a friend, and he can. That's where that window is left open for the viewer to decide. But we would see, like, where does he take a step forward from there, and that's where his next decision takes him.
Yeah, and I think some of it too goes back to the idea, the cultural idea of how much of who we are do we owe to those who came before us, and the visits to the two visits in the movie to the ancestral plane, or I guess 3 visits, and the one that stands out is the last one, T'Challa's second visit, where he tells his father, "I can't stay here with you, I can't rest," where he distances himself from those who came before, because he feels that the choices that they made were wrong, not just for their people, but ethically wrong.
Yeah, there's and it's funny too. We didn't even mention the Killmonger one in the previous segment, or this one, when Killmonger has that same ancestral thing. Like, it's such. I mean, it's still on the ancestral plane because you can see out the window that it's there. Yeah, but like, N'Jobu is stuck in this, just separate from everyone else, even though he's there to a degree, and like that whole talk is so heartbreaking.
I challenge that, because I don't think that it's N'Jobu that's stuck in a different place on the ancestral plane, because unless you make the conceit that the ancestral plane is a physical metadimensional location where people are actually reliving or living their lives separately, what I think that implies is it's not a place, it's the person, right? Like,
it's a journey we were on all along.
When he took the herb, he was not sent to where N'Jobu was. Killmonger's ancestral plane is his creation. Whereas maybe T'Challa's is a grander sense, right? His formation is not as heartbreaking and as limited to that Oakland apartment block like Eric's was. T'Challa's was being raised in the heart of Africa, right? Like, he's in the tree alone is its own symbol of, like, right, like the heart of Africa, the sacred tree, the Garden of Eden symbol.
I can see that. I think part of me is having, like, prior knowledge is the comics, and that they do go to, like, it is not their own idea of what a place is. They actually, it is another plane of existence, and that's just from my knowledge from the comics. And then also in the context of the movie, his father sees him, and he's at one point he makes a comment, "No tears for me," and Eric says, "Why, we all die," and then his father's tearing up, and then at the very end you start to see that his father sees, like, what, I should have taken you back to Wakanda. Because of what I did, I've now set you on this path that's gonna, essentially, I've set you on a path to destruction now. And he sheds another tear, and then so does Eric. And, like, they both, like, I don't know if he would be as reflective to see that his father sees that he failed him. So there's some of the dialogue and some of the way his father acts is like, oh, what, I see the error in my ways in my death, but also in the way that I set you on a path that you're not going to ever be able to change from now.
Yeah, I think I interpreted that the apartment that he goes to on the plane as kind of an echoing of the idea of the lost son, which they both kind of are. Both N'Jobu and Eric are these lost sons of Wakanda, and that apartment is kind of what they had. That was their life. And so to me, it kind of fit that they weren't in the same place. You know, he didn't meet his father under the tree.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, because they both find in their first interaction, yes, they speak, Eric and N'Jobu speak later on in the interaction, but in the first, now that I'm thinking back on it, in the first part of the interaction with both fathers, they are always finding their memory. So when Eric walks in, he walks straight to the panel and he finds the book that he found when he was a kid, and he becomes a kid, and he finds the key to get back into Wakanda, the ring, right?
No, the key's his mark.
Well, right, like, but he has the prince's ring. So even though he had the marking, they didn't just kill him on the spot because, you know, who am I? I've got this ring.
Yeah,
right. Other than that, they could just throw him out and be like, "Well, you got this tattoo somehow. We don't know who you are."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to get a War Dog tattoo, it's very. I mean, it's only Wakandans have this, and it's. I mean, the key I feel definitely, because he says, you know, you found the key that I left you, and that's when he touches his lip. That's when the son shows him his lip. Yep. So the key refers to that, but like that's how you get in. But how he stays there, how he becomes a king, is the ring. Like it's like a second key. I'm trying to think of another way to. It's like you got it. You snuck in. You got in. He didn't sneak in, but he got in. But this is how you stay.
Yeah. And in T'Challa's interaction with his father, he doesn't gain any insight or advice. He doesn't get the part of him. You know, he's, you know, how do I be a good king? And his dad's answer isn't anything crazy, really, that I recall. Yeah. You saw it twice. I don't. But his father's advice is just like, yeah, but you know, you just do the best for your people or whatever.
Yeah, he says, you know, it's like I'm not ready for this. He's like, have you not been prepared? And then his last thing he says to him is, it's not easy for a good man to be king.
Yeah,
yeah,
and his concern is the same concern that N'Jobu has, which is that, oh well, if you're not ready for a world without me, then I failed you, right? So they're both having like this memory without the interaction of like advice. You know, it's not like you walked into somebody's room and you're like, I need this advice, and you have this conversation. It's more internal monologue-y to me, and that's why I got the feeling that when he was in that apartment, it was not ancestral plane, so to speak, more than internal plane. But that's an interpretation, I guess, that doesn't gel with Stan and Kirby's visions.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to look back, I don't even think Stan and Jack had too much of the astral plane stuff in it at the time. But I've only read a few stories with Black Panther. My favorite being the Reggie Hudlin and John Romita Jr. story. It splits my mind now, but that's one of the first ones that I read, and I definitely recommend you check it out. He kicks Captain America's butt.
He seems to do that quite a bit. I don't know, though, if we talked enough about Killmonger in the last pod that we did on this, because we're going to put it out separately, but that's a complicated character that needs a lot of time.
There's a lot to unpack there.
This movie is great because it not only discusses the African side of things, but because with Eric Killmonger, you bring in the idea of like the missing people, the people who are essentially they're people as well, and they're left to suffer. And Eric Killmonger does a great job of bringing that story to us, and it's like it's something that I was amazed they brought into it. So again, this is the first one movie in, and they've already like hit like the biggest nail on the head of like something we need to discuss as like a society. You know, Black culture needs to discuss. Or should discuss. I say this being a mixed man who has, you know, only somewhat insight into Black people's lives.
I think the essential kernel of his creation was, aren't all people your people?
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, he's angry, and yeah, he's going to do all these things that we have to count him as a supervillain, but like the very simple truth is, like, aren't all people your people?
Yeah. And I mean, that's how you make a good villain, is a character who's not, I mean, a good character in general, but also good villains is like, oh, they kind of have a point. Like, you look at like some of the best ones over time, like, oh, people love Sephiroth. It's like, oh, because he kind of had a point, his means were, you know, not what you would want, but he wasn't without reason. He's not just the Joker. Like, Joker can still be good, but there's times where, like, I need a character with depth. Like, Whiplash wasn't a great villain. Whiplash, and then I'm trying to think Mandarin was another one where you're like, all right, you just want to be rich. Cool. That's okay. But when you
those characters can start off that way if they find a deeper meaning. Like, Booster Gold just wants to be rich too and famous, right?
Yeah.
I know we're talking about a different universe, but like over time you see the cracks, right? Where he just can't help also wanting to do good or wanting to be accepted as somebody that does good, even though he has this ulterior motive, right? So if you could take a simple idea and turn it, I want to be rich, into something else, then they become okay. But I think Killmonger's origin precludes that, right? Like, at least I don't know if he follows the comics or not.
No. I mean, in the comics, the character is if I know correctly, is a character just from another African tribe who throughout time has tried to infiltrate Wakanda, take over Wakanda, but he's just another African tribe. He's not part of Wakanda. He was he wasn't as fleshed out as this. This is a very different take, but a great take, and specifically for the story too. But
first of all, Michael B. Jordan, best casting choice.
I couldn't think of anyone better. I mean, I loved him as Johnny Storm. I mean...
You mean Captain America?
Yeah.
Wait, isn't that Johnny Storm too?
Yeah. Wait, I'm mixed up.
There's a lot of Johnny Storms running around in this.
Well, that's one thing that when they first talked about the Marvel buyout of Fox, Chris Evans was tweeting like, so when do I get my team up movie between Captain America and Human Torch? Because I can't wait for that.
I saw that one too.
It's like, yeah, I'll click 2 paychecks too. Why not?
That's awesome. But wow, he's cut, huh? I'm waiting for the awkward silence.
Oh no, I'm giving Michael a chance to talk, but I did like that he wasn't like M'Baku, like giant and yoked compared to T'Challa, but he was larger. Like he was bigger than T'Challa, and that gave a good not fierceness, but he is imposing. Like he was a threat. Like every moment he was on screen, and you saw that, and the way he carried himself. Like I've only seen a few movies with Michael B. Jordan. I've yet to see Creed, which is ridiculous.
It's another Coogler film.
Yeah,
so good.
So I think the only thing I've seen him in a couple movies. One of them being Chronicle, and the other
Fantastic Four.
No, actually, I didn't see Fan Four Stick. I didn't see Fan Four Stick, and then there was another one that he did with Miles Teller as well. It was like a holiday movie, I think, but yeah, it wasn't phenomenal. But I blame the movie, not him.
So Killmonger comes up in Oakland. He's a product of American violence, right? Like to put not too fine a point on it, but he's a product of inner city American violence and a product of international American violence when they use him as a weapon. And then it seems to turn it not inward, right? He doesn't become radicalized against. You could see a story where he becomes radicalized in his view of like taking down specific people or specific places, right? And that becomes like the bad version of a villain, where he's like, well, I have to burn Oakland to the ground because that's
what hurt me.
That's what hurt me.
Yeah, and you're right, because even in his master plan, it's to, okay, I'm going to take over Wakanda, and then we're going to run the world correctly. Like he has this in his own mind. It's not burn it all to the ground. He's like, no, like we might have to do that to a degree, but we have to do it to uplift it in his head. At least that was a bit of my read.
He tells you that too when when he announces himself as the son of Njobu, because that was his father's idea, was we need to level the playing field, right? All these people are being oppressed in Oakland because they don't have the means to fight back. And Eric very much takes that on in trying to say, we have all this technology, we have the power to give our people the means to fight back against the system that is keeping them oppressed.
I think that in terms of writing that idea, they made him go from like 85 to 100 pretty quickly there, where it was like he tells the little king's council or whatever it is, all the tribes leaders, when they say who he is and all that, he says what his idea is, like, you know, you need to help all these other people that are oppressed. There, you know, millions and millions of African descendants that are being tortured essentially around the world in their living conditions, and you're not doing anything about it. And that section of the idea to me was the moment where you look at him and you're like, this is the chance for this movie to make a villain, quote unquote, well, that's not a villain, right? He becomes an immediate secondary option as king, where you're like, well, this is a way that they could run this country. And you could really argue that if they kind of kept him in that vein, many people would say, oh, well, we don't need T'Challa back. Versus then later in the film where it's just like, we got thousands of these spears and we're going to send them across the globe and they're going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, now you're just a villain.
Yeah. Not because he has to, I mean, and that's unfortunately the story, that he needs to go over that edge so that it also, because then it also shows that he's not alone in his vision. Like, Wakambi, his, T'Challa's best friend and, Aoki's boyfriend, sides with him when he's like, when Black Panther comes back, he's like, kill this guy. It's like, they could be like, hey, you know what? He's right. The challenge isn't over. He's not dead and he didn't yield. So this is still going on. And they decide to go with him. So it's, even though he is acting villainous, people are still following him. People are still like, no, we need to push forward this agenda. And that's part of it's that nationalism idea that they kind of want to touch on and be like, hey, you know what? And that's what we have. Akea. She's like, no, like for my country, I will do what I need. And earlier on in the story, when Nakia tries to, hey, like, let's get out of here, she's like, no, I have to stay here. And like, she's like, no, like, this isn't what you do for your country. You fight for your country, not for your king. Like, that's that battle that they have.
Mm-hmm.
But I still bought that what you're saying, Ken, right? Like, he becomes this embodiment of other ways of thinking, and therefore other people can side with him without feeling like they're betraying their king. And I want to talk about having a king in a second, but nobody else had the same feeling I did, where it was like, well, if they don't push Killmonger over the line, then maybe we have a chance in this movie to really, like, make people question which character to side with. Or is that just too complicated for a Marvel movie?
I have seen people make this argument.
Okay. So I'm not alone.
In the last couple of days. And I don't know if, like, it would have been definitely an interesting idea to tackle with if they had gone in that direction, but it is still an origin story in the MCU, right? I don't think that they were ever going to go that far with it and introduce T'Challa and the Black Panther and then say, but is he really the best choice?
Right, and that's the thing too, is there are stories in the Marvel Universe where T'Challa is no longer part of Wakanda, like he's in America doing stuff, and there's stories where, you know, Shuri takes over and she's the Black Panther, and I think it's more. I think one of the main reasons we didn't get this story is because it's still just when they were planning this, they're like, okay, here's the one Black Panther movie. I mean, they didn't anticipate that, like, oh, this probably could have been just like Captain America and Iron Man, like, okay, we should prepare for a sequel, like, heavily. Like, they were just like, we'll leave things open for a sequel, but they weren't writing down, like, ideas for 2 and 3 as they wrote this, and, like, planning out, okay, this is the third movie, this is how we go from here to here, where they did with Captain America, so to speak.
I guess that made me sad a little bit, though, because even having taken him over the edge, and even saying at the end, like, okay, well, we can save you, you don't have to die on this mountaintop looking at the sunset, because earlier in the movie we said sunsets were beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought that there was a chance there where, you know, maybe he didn't take Killmonger's word for it and let him die. And you know, we have 2 Black Panthers going forward where they try to work together for a little while, and we get a whole movie where maybe Killmonger's trying his best to see it T'Challa's way, you know, and then movie 3 he flips again or so. You know, there was an opportunity maybe to keep him around. Would that have been bad?
I think simply for the origin story that it is.
Okay, back to the.
I guess that's what it comes back to, is that for this story, yeah, and also, I mean, but they had the other thing to that too is they gave him the perfect button on his last, like his ending. He's like, no, and then he drives it back to the idea of like, you know, he's you know, I descend from people who decided to jump off the boat. Like, give me their death, and still pulls it back to, you know, to his origins, so to speak, than to say Wakanda's origins. He's like, no, like, this is where I belong. I'm done here. And almost he's like, it's not worth being in prison now. And
but he mentioned, though, you know, he tried to proclaim during the movie that he was Wakandan, and to take it back to that point would remind. Well, does it? I don't know. I'm trying to sort through this thought, and I don't know if it does. Does his ending being that make him either non-Wakandan, or does it make him an outsider again? Or does it prove that he was never Wakandan? I don't know.
Well, I think that's also I mean, I'm sorry to cut in if Michael has something to say too. I think that's also the story of Black people dealing with the idea of what is it to be African American versus Black. And that's part of that. And that's inherent in his story. Like Ken Dixon will say, a friend of mine, Ken Dixon, will say, you know, he's Black. And what that means to him is that he's not African. He has no ties to that because those ties were cut years ago. And there's a struggle in the Black community to what he would say is that that's something that they have to deal with on a semi-regular basis or a completely regular basis. But again, this is me imparting secondhand knowledge. So I think they kept that in the character for that reason.
Yeah, I think that the struggle of a lot of the characters of what does it mean to me to be Wakandan is an echo of what does it mean to be Black, and is there one way to do it, right? But you'll get a lot of arguments that there's a right or a wrong way to be a member of the community, and that if you don't do it a certain way, that you are betraying the ideals one way or the other. And I think that Killmonger does a good job of portraying, like, to the last, the very militant take on that.
That my identity is the core of my reality type idea?
Yeah, in a way.
My outward identity is the core of my reality, is what I guess I'm getting at.
If I might flip that around and say that he doesn't really differentiate, right? That what you see is really kind of what you get with him, right? There is no difference between the outward and the inward.
Makes sense. In a world like the one that they went through, does it diminish the story at all to still, in this day and age, have a king? And in my mind, in, let's call it, Eurasian history, a king seems to have been a symbol of repression or oppression, either outwardly or, more subtly. And in countries that still have them in the modern day and age, they really have very little power. The power has been redistributed to a parliament or another governing body. And while we did see the four heads of the tribes standing at the table, does it diminish that at all, to this story at all, to still be like working on the idea of a king and a kingdom?
It didn't for me. I think it did, a good job of portraying that there are that a kingdom is only as strong as its king, and that you get all types.
Yeah, and also there is, I mean, even after the fight between Eric Killmonger and T'Challa, and they go to see M'Baku, he says, you know, was he killed or was he defeated in fair combat? And they say, like, and they're about to, like, you know, say, well, it wasn't fair, like, you know, it wasn't fair, but, like, he's like, no, like, our society is based on the idea that, you know, if it's through this, then this is how we decide on who's going to lead us. And if when I chose to step up, that was my choice, and I lost. And he sensed, T'Challa said, you know, be a leader to your people. And so he sees that even if he is on the losing side of something in that, he still sees the gravity of what that means for their people and how they are led.
I think my struggle with it comes from the fact that their king is ostensibly chosen through martial power. Mm-hmm. And in the end of this film, they decide they're going to put out outreach into the rest of the world and make it better. But the power stems from his, you know, inability to be beaten in combat. Yeah, he may be a good ruler, and we got lucky that T'Challa is a good and benevolent king, but there's room for wonderment that, like, yeah, like if, let's say, Killmonger could not have been beaten,
yeah,
and T'Challa had died, right? Where in the story is the wonder? And maybe this is the sequel. Where is the wonder about, is their system of government, while it was great on an insular, you know, kingdom where no one was questioning the ruler not because the outside world is influencing them or anything like that, but because their worldview was shallow, right? They didn't concern themselves with beyond their borders. And so, yeah, a kingdom seems like a quaint, antiquated thing to the modern world, but it still worked for them. Maybe the sequel deals with, like, is this system of martial power, right? Because he gained his power by beating people in combat or not being challenged, the right way to go. And you might argue maybe that certain people didn't challenge him that could have beaten him. I don't know.
Yeah. This is a thread in the comics too, is that after a while, the people of Wakanda do start to question, like, our king is constantly out on adventures with the Avengers. Why are we, like, he should be here focused on our kingdom, not worried about the outside world. And that is something that could be given voice later on in the next movie. Hopefully we get it sometime soon. And, but it's definitely a thread they can pull on. They've definitely laid the groundwork, because they have the border tribe who was on the other side of this insurrection said, like, oh no, we side with Killmonger. And meanwhile, the Dora Milaje and Mboko's tribe both sided on the other side. They didn't really pull into the River Tribe or anyone really, aside from, or they didn't pull in the River Tribe or the merchant or mining tribes. So it's like, but in this conflict, there was a divide, which I found it interesting that they're divided between red and blue. And I'm like, it's
a visual choice.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that was going to happen, right? Like, when I saw that they were red and blue, and that the two leads there were, you know, boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever they were, it was kind of like, well, they're opposing colors, and there's a relationship to be fractured, because that's where this is going to go. Yeah. Automatic, right?
Well, that's something you question too, because at the very end, when W'Kabi is like, you know, are you willing to kill me? And she's like, for this, or for the king, yes. And it's like, does he then recognize, like, you know what? If she's willing to do this, then I'm on the wrong side of this, because she's, you know, I trust her. Or is he just like, I don't want this fight? It's an interesting question. I'd love to explore it, like, see what they say, like, in a commentary somewhere, like, oh, this is what we thought about this. I still like movie commentaries.
I guess what we're saying is we want more inner geopolitical strife in the next Wakanda movie, right?
Well, yeah, because things will be shaking up dramatically.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good additional Black Panther, a full second episode on Black Panther's probably enough. Well, that was fun. This was We Were Gamers, the bonus Black Panther segment with Ken.
Ken Rollo, thank you for listening.
Thanks for joining us. Do you want to tell anybody where to find you?
In the coming future, you'll be able to find a podcast that I will be hosting called Comic Banter. You can find us on the social media as, Instagram, Twitter, at Comic Banter. Give us a listen. Our first episode will be Black Panther, actually. And, from there on, it's probably going to be a lot of comic book reviews. So I hope you like comics.
And always, Michael, thanks for joining me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, this was fun. Not a lot of games, but gamers doesn't mean you have to play games. Sometimes you can watch some pretty sweet movies. You can find us on all the social media at We Were Gamers, and we'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody.